Kia ora everyone, warm Pacific greetings and welcome to this press conference of the virtual Pacific Islands Forum Leaders Special Retreat. I'm Lisa Williams-Lahari, the Public Affairs Advisor for the Forum, and along with the comms team here, we'll be facilitating today's virtual session. We are joined today by the Forum Chair, Tuvalu Prime Minister, the Honourable Kausea Natano, Talofalava Minister, and the outgoing Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Forum, Dame Meg Taylor. Before I hand over to the Chair for his opening comments, a very quick reminder to keep your mic off at all times, unless you're asking a question. To do that, you can join the question queue in a direct chat message to us, and I'll let you know when you're on. Please feel free to use the chat for general comments and talking to each other. And apologies if for some reason we don't get to your question on time, and we will try to respond via email. For those colleagues with a choppy connection, please do forward your questions to me. We'll try to slot them in on your behalf. Now, without further ado, I'll hand over to our Forum Chair and Secretary General, Talofalava Chair. The floor is yours.
Talofa Lisa, thank you also very much for the opportunity for me to share with you the decisions made by the forum leaders. And I also want to invite Dame Meg Taylor, if she could also assist me in answering those questions. The forum retreat discussed only two issues, very important issues. One is the pandemic, and the second is the appointment of the Secretary General. I have to say that the appointment of the Secretary General was supported by all leaders. And I'm also pleased to say that the region has been kindly received by assistance from Australia and New Zealand. They have kindly donated vaccines for the region. I think those are the only two main important issues that were discussed during the meeting. Together with out-of-session issues that we will have to discuss later on. I now give the floor to you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. We will now take the first question from Sapir Myron of the Samoa Observer.
Talofalava, thank you very much for the opportunity to put a question to you. I suppose if I may start by asking, what was the decision of the Micronesian leaders about their earlier suggestion that they might need to leave the forum if their nominee is not chosen? Thank you very much. And if I can follow up after with a second question, that would be great.
Thank you. Forum Chair, there's been a question from Samoa, so we'll wait on your response before her follow-up question.
Thank you very much for the question. Micronesian grouping have agreed and fully support the solidarity of the region, and they have withdrawn that initiative to move away from the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. If I may ask, could you expand for us, please, what was the purpose or motivation behind not going with this quote gentleman's agreement rotation of the regions, please? What was behind that?
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, the gentleman agreement was discussed during the retreat, and leaders have deliberated for quite a long time during the retreat on the gentleman agreements. And because of the the gentleman agreement is not in the charter, in the forum charter, or it's not a legal obligations of the forum. And that is why we, the retreat didn't recognize the gentleman agreements in considering the next Secretary General.
Chair, if I can just assist on that. A gentleman's agreement may have existed before 2002, but there was a revision by the Pacific Island Forum in 2002 on the selection of the Secretary General, and there was, and any agreement or any decision of the 2002 superseded a gentleman's agreement. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, SG. We'll now go to Koroi Hawkins from Radio New Zealand Pacific.
Vinaka Lisa, and welcome everyone. I think we covered the main things that we're all interested in, but I'm interested in what that 2002 decision was that you referred to, Dame Meg Taylor. Just what was the decision that changed things, I guess. Thank you.
My recollection is this, and I apologize, I don't have the agreement right here in front of me, but you will recall there used to be an understanding that the host country, Fiji, and Australia, but Australia and New Zealand could not hold the position of the Secretary General. And I believe it was after 2002, there were changes made to the selection of the Secretary General, and that's when Greg Irwin took over Australia. Became the Secretary General, and it's really based on the merit and on the circumstances that existed at that time.
It was a very close vote. Was there any abstentions or will there be any record of the vote and how it played out and who took part and who didn't?
What happens within the leaders' retreat is confidential in terms of how the vote was. The only country that didn't vote was New Caledonia, because you know that the government has resigned there. So the officials could not, because of the weather as well, with the Cyclone Lucas heading there, they could not get a signature from the caretaker president to be able to attend. So there were 17 countries that attended the meeting, and the process of telephone dictation, which we adopted, ran very, very smoothly.
Thank you, SG. We have our next question from Palau with Bernadette Carrion-Brooks. Bernadette, while you're getting your sound issues sorted, we'll go forward now to Nick McClellan. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, and good morning, Chair and Secretary General. My question relates to the COVID-19 discussion. The forum statement last night welcomed Australia's commitment to support vaccine distribution, but also noted that, and I quote, multilateral and bilateral partnerships working to ensure 100% coverage. Could I ask which countries are offering bilateral partnerships on vaccines apart from Australia and New Zealand? And did the retreat discuss China's offer to share vaccines with developing countries? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Nick. Yes, there has been mention from some of the countries in the region that they have been given or offered to receive vaccines from China, Taiwan, and other bilateral partners.
If I may assist just here, Prime Minister, Chair, France has been supplying vaccines to French Polynesia, and I assume also to New Caledonia. United States has been supplying vaccines to Republic of Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, and Palau. Many of our countries, or all our countries actually, have signed up to COVAX, and a lot of the discussion there was how we're going to access that and the costs, etc. As you all know, there's also the WHO and UNICEF that are responsible within the region, as well as multilateral organizations to assist. And of course, we work very closely with SPC on all this. The Prime Minister of Australia did make commitment of finance to make sure that vaccinations would be available through the region, and assured us of, I think it's the AstraZeneca production in Australia, and that was received well by our leaders to know that there would be vaccines not far away. And there was a commitment that all of the Pacific in time will get the vaccination. Now, how all this is going to roll out is going to depend on supplies, as you know. And I think the most important thing is to make sure that no one is left behind in this. Thank you.
Thank you, SG, and thank you, Nick. We're heading back to Palau now. Bernadette, how's your sound?
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Thank you so much. My question will be, going back to the SG appointment, it's obvious that there was a split in the voting. How will the Pacific Island Forum move forward on making the voting or the result more transparent?
Thank you for the question. Yes, there has been a discussion on that, and we have the leaders have tasked the Forum Secretariat to look into that issue and report back to the leaders in their future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. We'll move now to Evan Wasuka from ABC Pacific.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much. Just a follow-up to what Bernadette's question in regards to, in the lead up to the special retreat, there had been, it was quite divisive in regards to Micronesia's position. Are you concerned that this will weaken the bonds of the Pacific countries that's held the forum together, this position of Micronesia and what's been happening?
Thank you for the question. No, I think the Pacific remains stronger. No, their solidarity remains stronger, and I can tell you that we have resolved everything, and we will continue to work together.
Are you able to say how that was resolved? The differences?
Thank you for the question. I can only tell you that we have resolved it, and we are also very glad that all the leaders now work together in that solution.
Thank you, Chair. We'll head back to Fiji for Wanshika Kumar from the Fiji Times. Thank you. Wanshika, if you're having problems with your sound, we're going to jump ahead now to Sadhna Sen. Thank you, Sadhna.
Thank you, Lisa. Two questions. Again, going back to the appointment of the leadership appointment of the SG. We got information last night because leaders wanted us to know that there was this split in the Forum Secretariat or the appointment of the SG. It'd be interesting to see how the next few days pan out. Do you think, Mr. Chair and Dame Meg, that there is a need to review the process by which the SG is appointed? Second question, with Dame Meg leaving the Forum Secretariat, there is not a single female in the top management of the Forum Secretariat. We pointed this out in an article a few weeks back, that this does not augur well for the region, that has the poorest performance of women in terms of political leadership. You came in, Dame Meg, with 2 women deputies. You're leaving with not a single woman in PIF's management. Do you have any comments on that?
Thank you for the question. I'll leave the second question to Dame Meg Taylor. But the first question, leaders have agreed to task the Foreign Secretary to review the process of appointing the Secretary General. So, and report back to the leaders. Thank you.
Well, I think you can look across the region and see that other crop agencies too have lost women at the helm of the organizations. But I'm very proud to say that the Pacific Island Forum appointed me as Secretary General in 2014, and I've served 2 terms. And I hope that I have touched the minds and hearts of young women, that they too will aspire to senior positions within the region. When I came in, I was supported by 2 women, Andy Fong Toy and Christelle Pratt, who were Deputy Secretary Generals, and both have moved on, as I will. I would have hoped that women would apply for positions at senior level here, but this is a competitive process for anyone who is a director, an advisor, a director, or a Deputy Secretary General. For those who don't know, we only have 1 Deputy Secretary General now. We have cut back a position and we have increased our directors' positions. Over the years ahead, I hope that the incoming Secretary General also will receive strong applications from women for positions within these organizations. Women may have to make those choices themselves about if they want to take these senior positions. These jobs are not easy. They are challenging, and there are certain, I think it comes down to a personal decision whether you're prepared to take on those challenges. And I would hope that young women and women who are in the public service or civil service now or in private sector, that they will apply for jobs in the crop agencies and take on leadership roles.
Vinaka Dame Meg, just a follow-up question, Lisa. It may or it may not happen, but there seems to be a split in Pacific regionalism. And last night we had the Vice Chancellor of the University of the South Pacific kicked out by the Fijian government. This is a regional institution, the institution that's held up as the success story as far as Pacific regionalism is concerned. What is the concern from forum leaders, from the forum secretariat, on a member of the forum, which has just recently started re-engaging in terms of regionalism, now kicking out in the dark of the night the Vice Chancellor of the University of the South Pacific?
Sadhna, that question is not directly related to this press conference.
No.
I'll leave it to.
It is related to Pacific regionalism.
We will take it, but I think there's 2-pronged question here. One is about the divisions within supposed divisions, and also about USP. USP, the meeting that started this morning did not discuss it because we went straight into to complete the meeting of last night, going through communique, etc., and leaders went out. I found out just before I came into the meetings this morning, and I'm not going to comment on something that I don't know the details, and I will go and find out after this press conference because a USP is a member of CROP. However, we also live in countries that are run by the laws of the state, and I don't have any authority over what the Fiji government does, but I am interested in what the reasons were, as I'm sure the chair of the forum is. But with regard to this split in the region, in the months going before the selection of the Secretary General, there were positions taken by sub-regions. And then last night, finally, an outcome where we now have a Secretary General. And that was decided by all the leaders. Every leader in that room was able to have a say as to who would then emerge as the Secretary General. And I think there is an assumption in the region that this has not been, that in past choices of Secretary Generals, that there hasn't been this contention, and then where leaders have then got together and have had to cast a vote. My own appointment as Secretary General, I know that that went to a final vote. In 2002, I believe, at the forum, in the appointment of a Secretary General, it went to 4 rounds. So this is processes that leaders come together, discuss, and then choose the candidate they want to lead the Secretariat that will serve, to serve the Pacific Island Forum. And I think that to suggest that there's splits, there are different points of view. As it is in many organizations, there will be different points of view, different approaches. But the fact that we have an incoming Secretary General that has been appointed is commendable. And I welcome the appointment of Honourable Henry Puna, who will take over from me as Secretary General to the Pacific Island Forum.
Okay.
Thank you, SG. Honourable Chair, would you like to respond to the question or tag on to SG's comments?
Thank you very much for the question. As the Secretary General or the outgoing Secretary General said, no division happens not only in the region but also in the world, and no, it's up to the organization to now to revisit if there is any improvements that we could do to improve the process. Those are the opportunities that challenges that we face, and it's up to the organization to to come up with solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And Yakwe to Gift Johnson from the Marshall Islands.
Thank you, Lisa. I'd like to follow up and thank you to both the chair and to the outgoing SG, and particularly for the outgoing SG's comments just now about the process for selection. I'm looking at a comment this morning from the Palau president, President Whips, in which he's pretty much reiterating the sentiment that was expressed earlier before this decision was reached overnight about the problems that Micronesians see of being sort of pushed aside in this, and saying, well, what's the point of being involved? So my question is, does the fact that there clearly is division over this mean or imply that leaders will be active with their Micronesian counterparts to try to address these things in an island way? I mean, I think there is a feeling up in the north that they're getting that this is another indication of the north getting a short end of a stick, and whether that's correct or not, it's a perception that seems to be prevalent among the leadership. And so my question is just, is there likely to be more activity in terms of trying to deal with this division apparently between the North and the South Pacific? Thank you.
Thank you, Johnson, for the question. As I said before, the process of the appointment of the Secretary General has been agreed upon by the leaders to be revisited. And in that report, we will see the leaders will decide on whether it will accommodate all the all the demands from the region, from all the sub-regional bodies of the region.
Thank you, Chair. We'll go to Stefan Brewster from SBS Australia.
Thanks very much, Lisa. First of all, I'd like to thank the Secretary General for your wonderful leadership over the last 6 years and your accessibility to the media during that time and always being so available. I've got just a question about the transition. How will the transition occur from yourself to Mr. Puna? When will that occur? When will the exact handover time and date be? What are the protocols around that? What advice will you give him in terms of being a Secretary General, and particularly about the rift that has been exposed during this process? And finally, do you have any regrets from your time as Secretary General, including maybe not having a clearer transition process identified for your succession? Thank you.
I spoke with, thank you, Chair, if I may, through you. I spoke with incoming Secretary General Henry Puna this morning in the Cook Islands to congratulate him, to let him know that Deputy Secretary General Manoni and myself and all the directors, we will be meeting this afternoon. We will have a conversation, particularly about what will be required for a handover. I'm a big believer in making sure that there are very thorough briefing books on everything that we're doing. So over the last months, whilst I've been here, I've been having briefings from all the key results areas of our work. So it's not going to be a complicated challenge for us to be able to put these briefs together. I am not clear when incoming Secretary General will arrive. The Forum has asked me to stay a month to prepare the institution for the handover. Then I will take my leave. I will leave and head back to Papua New Guinea after a break here and explore a little bit of Fiji that I don't often get a chance to do. What was the question about regrets again?
Do you have any regrets from your time as Secretary General, and particularly regarding the transition process that we've just seen unfold?
Well, you know, I think that we all assume, and we don't assume it, we know it. We're just living in very unprecedented times. We can't travel. And all the other meetings that we've had with the Pacific Island Forum has been when we get together, the leaders get together, have their time together, catch up on news of their countries, their families. But most of all, I think one of the important things I've seen in my tenure is that the politics of the region my job was to bring the politics back into it. That was what Marauta's report in the review of the Pacific Plan said. There was the absence of the politics. And I think those of us who were in Tuvalu saw that, particularly around the climate issues. That debate that went on with the leaders for almost 12 hours on the Kanakai Declaration was very much around the politics coming back in the region. I don't think that I can dwell on the regrets of the transitional process because we're in difficult times. I think that if I may commend the leadership of the chair, Tuvalu, who has really relentlessly worked with us to try and get all the leaders together in one place to have this meeting. And the discussions that they had yesterday went all day and into 1 o'clock in the morning, and again starting at 10 o'clock today, trying to find ways forward so that we could address the COVID issues, understand better about the vaccines, and also to select the incoming Secretary General. But from a personal point of view, if any regret that I have is that I don't think I've put enough into youth and women. My job took me traveling so much around the region. I got to cover many issues, but as Secretary General, you want to sometimes dive deep, and it's hard because there are so many issues that we're all managing. But I think this year, particularly because of COVID, because of the budgetary constraints, we did a very thorough prioritization process, and we were able to ensure that we could give our member states 30% discount on their contributions, and that was very much appreciated. So it's going to be focused and leaner, and we will deliver. Thank you. or the incoming Secretary General will deliver with his team.
Thank you, SG. We're going to bring back Fiji Times. Wanshika Kumar, I hope your connection is okay now. Go ahead with your question. Okay, Wanshika, while you're fixing that connection, we're going to jump across to Australia. Ben Doherty of The Guardian, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you very much to the Chair and the Secretary General for your time today. Could I follow up on Sadhana's question regarding the University of the South Pacific? The next forum leaders meeting is scheduled for Suva. Might that be reconsidered, and might that not be considered appropriate given Fiji appears to be undermining what is a vital regional institution?
Thank you for the question from Australia. Well, in our tradition, we don't run away from issues. We have to face it. So I think the choice of Fiji being the host for this year, I think is a good one, because we will be now in the country to solve that problem. Thank you.
Could just add on there, Chair, it's the 50th anniversary of the Pacific Island Forum. Fiji was one of the founding fathers of the forum, and that is why also they had offered to host. Thank you.
Thank you, SG. Wanshika is unable to join us, Chair, so she's asked me to ask on her behalf a question relating to the COVID-19 vaccine. Her question is, how are the forum nations planning to allow equitable distribution of vaccines in the Pacific? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The forum leaders have agreed to task all the health ministers in the region to look into that issue and come up with a report. Now back to the leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Our next question is from Tess Newton-Kane.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Secretary General. I have two questions. First of all, during their special retreat, did leaders receive an update on the work of the COVID Economic Task Force working group that was established by the finance ministers during 2020? And secondly, are you able to tell us what the leaders discussed in relation to climate change issues, especially with regards to regional preparation for participation in COP26? Thank you.
If I may, Chair, with regard to Economic Task Force, it was in the briefing papers to the leaders out of session that went out, which have been adopted. That work continues under the auspices of the Forum Economic Ministers. And data being updated constantly because of the projections that were had. And it was interesting enough, particularly around remittances, where we thought that there'd be a huge decline in remittances in the region. Fiji, increase of about 7%, Samoa 30%, and this is sourced from their central banks, if those of you are interested in just what is happening in terms of support that's coming into our countries. On climate change, there was not a discussion on climate change. There were two agenda items specifically for this special leaders retreat, and that was on COVID and COVID vaccines and on the selection of the Secretary General. Other issues in terms of the preparatory work, we've had discussions amongst our ministerials, and the lead is by, as you know, with SPREP plus the rest of CROP. And I think if anything, we're doing much more with the United Kingdom than in a long time, particularly in preparation for the COP26 later this year. In terms of details of that, I'm sure you can follow up with Kausea Natano. From the Secretariat's point of view, the issue is that one of the important issues that we've been asked by foreign ministers to focus on is that we need to get leadership at a senior level at COP to be in the negotiating room right through until the end of the negotiations. If there's anywhere where we're at a disadvantage, and we noticed this particularly when we were in Spain, was that the senior negotiators we used to have, what happens is that tickets are paid for us to come into these meetings, particularly by international organizations. And then when the meeting's over, people have to get on a plane and leave. And then you notice a meeting is called the day after, and then a lot of the trading goes on. We cannot allow that to happen going further. We have to secure senior persons or emissaries who will be in the negotiating room to discuss all these aspects that are going to be important for us, particularly now that major countries like the United States have come back in, and the implementation of the Paris Agreement, the climate finance issues, and to ensure that both the issues that were negotiated in Paris are now implemented, and to secure the financing that is going to be needed for adaptation within this region. Thanks, Tess.
Thank you, SG. For both yourself and the chair, there is a follow-up from Wanshika relating to the specific timeline for the rollout of the vaccine. How soon will Pacific Forum members have 100% coverage for the COVID-19 vaccine? And following your response, we will go back to Samoa and the observer. Stand by, Sapir.
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned earlier on, the leaders have tasked the health ministers of the region to look into the distribution of or the rollout of vaccine. When that is going to happen, we will have to wait for the health ministers to come up with that report, but it should be within this year. Thank you.
Can I just assist the chair? We'll make sure that the communique is available to all of you. And if you look at paragraph 7, it touches exactly on what the chair has mentioned. So we will ensure that conversation is had with the Pacific community and WHO to get this work underway immediately. I think there was, if I may, that there was the commitment of Australia and New Zealand that there will be vaccines to be shared across the region, gave assurance to the leaders that supplies would come. However, in terms of an exact date, I would be misleading you if I said that we had any clear indication of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Secretary General, I've been asked to just jump in here with my question. Just one brief question and then a slightly longer one after that, if you don't mind. Regarding the review that you both mentioned that's going to be undertaken by the Secretariat of the decision-making process and the appointment process of the future Secretary Generals, is there a deadline for that review, and will the review and any subsequent decisions from it be made public? That's my first question. And if I may, I'll ask the second one after. Thank you.
Well, what we have in place at the moment is the 2002 appointment procedures for the Secretary General. The review of that should be ready for the leaders when they meet, hopefully in August, which is the normal time that leaders meet, but that goes through the Forum Officials Committee and the Foreign Ministers Committee before it will get to the leaders. But I think that because, when the leaders ask for something in the year of their meeting, we immediately get to work on this. So this will happen. In terms of the transparency, that will depend on the leaders. Once they've made a decision, they may attach it to their communique because there is public interest in the way the Secretary General is appointed. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And so my second question, please, I take note that you said you're not willing to, to just yet speak about the USP issue before you're fully informed and briefed about what's happened. But if you could speak broadly, please, about what might be the situation if the forum decides it needs to talk to Fiji in a, I guess, either in a disciplinary or in an otherwise constructive manner. Is their chairship of the next meeting at risk at all? And also, Fiji would have been well aware throughout your meeting yesterday of what was going to take place. The Prime Minister is the Minister of Immigration and had approved for the professor to be deported. Are you concerned that that was kind of kept away from the rest of the forum leaders? Thank you very much.
I'm not going to speculate. This is a really important issue, huh? And if I just mouth off on something without the facts, I have to be very clear of the facts before I brief the chair of the forum, and then he'll make a decision with other leaders if there is a need for intervention. But I mean, just from what I've heard, I'm concerned, and we will collect the facts and see what we can do. But thank you.
Thank you, SG. Over to you, Evan, ABC Pacific.
Thank you, Chair and SG. Just coming back to last night's deliberations, I'm keen to know Australia's role in the whole process, being a bigger brother country, I guess, to the rest of the Pacific. Was Australia acting as a mediator, and what did Maurice Payne as Foreign Affairs Minister do? Also, did Australia cast a vote in the selection of the new SG? Thank you.
I'll answer that because the chair was, of course, the chair, and then he asked for, so the process of the dictation is this, for confidentiality and security and anonymity. The system was investigated by our colleagues to look at a voting system that would provide for that is used in other jurisdictions, which we found. But always in a leaders' meeting, when votes are cast and counting is done, one of the leaders is nominated as an overseer, oversees the process to make sure that the Secretary General records all the votes or the names of the candidate, and it's the process of verification. I think that's the better word. So Australia was nominated and was the verifier. So that was Maurice Payne's job, was to watch the voting process, and Deputy Secretary General sat with me when I recorded. The second verification was by the Deputy Secretary General, and Minister Payne, as the representative of the leaders, then oversees what we are doing. That was the function.
Thank you, SG. We're going to take a question now from Neil Sands.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for taking my question. Just going right back to the beginning of the call, the chairman said that the Micronesian states had withdrawn their threat to pull out of the Pacific Islands Forum. I just wanted to check what assurances you were given on that, because we've had the president of the Federated States of Micronesia on ABC's Pacific Beat this morning saying that the position of the 5 Micronesian nations, that they see no point in being in the PIF and will consider leaving if their nominee wasn't successful. He's saying that that's still their position and they're going to meet again to consider withdrawal. So yeah, just wanted to get some clarification on that if possible.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. As I mentioned early on during the discussion, we had a feeling that all the leaders were very strong in their support for the new Secretary General, and there was never been discussed, to be or to leave the PIF. I can also say that in some of the, the presidents of the Micronesian groups were in the meeting, the final part of the meeting, and they were very strong in their support for the solidarity of the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And for our final roundup of questions, we'll start with Nick McClellan, and then I'll read one from another journalist who is unable to connect. Nick, while you're sorting your sound issues, Samantha Magic is sending in apologies for her poor connection, and she has a question about the key priorities of the incoming Secretary General. What will their key priorities be as they take up the chair, as they take up the role?
I'll take that. Samantha, thank you for the question, but I think you've got to interview Honourable Henry Puna. I can't speak for him, sorry.
Thank you, Nick. How's your connection going? We have another question from, trying to connect. No, sorry, Koroi. Koroi, Radio New Zealand, did you still have your last question to pose?
Yes. Thank you for the answers so far, and acknowledge the position on the immediacy of the issue on the USP. But also we haven't actually heard from Chair, so I just wondered if I'd pose a question to Chair. If Chair, although this just happened, it's the top of a long-running issue that we've had with the USP in towards the end of last year. So I wonder if you had some concern on this development and pending, of course, further decisions later.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think I don't think it's proper for me to again to respond to what happens at the USP unless we receive all the facts on what happens in the USP. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you to our very special guest today. And can I ask you for your final comments to share with the press conference before we bring it to a close? Thank you. Over to you, Chair, and then to SG.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lisa, for the opportunity. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the media for sharing this, the outcome of the meeting, and I hope that the Foreign Secretary will provide all the information and the outcomes of the meeting to everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
As your outgoing Secretary General, I had the opportunity to speak with the leaders this morning to say goodbye, but also to just from the heart say how important it was for me to live in this part of the world, because I come from Papua New Guinea, a long way, and not as close to the ocean as this. But the issues that I think are really important is that for us all is to really invest in the education of our young people, but not just going to school and university, but to be thinkers, to be critical thinkers, to learn, to be inquisitive, to explore, and of course, to serve. And if we can inspire younger people to be able to do that, then we will have accomplished something. One other area that we work on here at the Secretariat that is very important is, I think, is the securing of the maritime boundaries against sea level rise. Paramount in terms of securing our sovereignty, paramount in terms of securing large ocean states, and of course an ocean continent, because if we don't secure our boundaries, and in time, if we have to leave islands, then we will always have those boundaries where there are the resources that we can draw from. Very, very important for the future. The work on the 2050 strategy that has been chaired by Fiji and Vanuatu continues, and the Secretariat works closely to support that initiative and trust that it will be ready for the leaders' meeting when Fiji hosts. The Kanaka Declaration on Climate is still the most important document that the Forum has released on climate change and climate issues. That is the document that we use as the what's the word? The document that sets the boundaries for the key issues that we've raised on temperature, on the 1.5 degrees, particularly on the transition from fossil fuels, from the NDCs, the contributions. So that's the basis of all the discussions that happen on climate. Now, does that mean that other groupings like the PCIDs and that are not important? Absolutely not. There will be groupings that will push harder on the climate issues because they are the issues that are important for the very survival of the region. I'm very proud of the work that's been done on the security area, particularly on the Boy Declaration that was passed in Nauru by the leaders, and the implementation of that, particularly because it widens the definition of security to human security, and how we've been able to apply that, particularly with the Bikitawa Declaration in terms of the Pacific humanitarian pathway during COVID. Now, a lot of people may not have paid attention to this, but this has been very important in terms of the protocols that were negotiated by all 18 countries so that we were able to move people, move medicines, move cargo, supplies right through to the countries that needed it. And it's helped to secure the safety of our peoples across the Pacific. And yes, true, the questions that have been asked about the work that's been done on the economic task force. The hardest challenge now is going to be how do we open up our economies when many of our economies are so very dependent on tourism and others coming in here. But there are other aspects of our economies, particularly in fisheries, and the work that's being done with FFA and the PNA in terms of the shipments and the safety of people on those vessels from COVID, etc. Under the Boy Declaration, of course, there is always the discussions that we have about the security issues in terms of the drug trafficking that goes on through the region. Cybersecurity has to be a focus for this region as well. And I'm pleased that we've got a good team here at the Secretariat that is very focused on that, working with police commissioners in the region around these specific issues. Perhaps one of the legacy that I leave that I am proud of as an institution is that when I first came here, people used to say to me, oh, you work for an organization that is controlled by Australia because that's who puts all the money in. Through the development of the Sustainable Finance Strategy, now the contributions of the member states, the Pacific, the Forum Island countries now contribute 51% to our budget, and Australia and New Zealand 49%. They do make up with extra support through the voluntary contributions, and that is open to any member state to make a voluntary contribution, as Papua New Guinea did when I first came here, with a substantial amount of $3 million to assist in the work of the Secretariat. And of course, there's the extra budget. But in terms of the contributions that are made for the work that we do, the Sustainable Finance Strategy is a major breakthrough that the Forum Island countries now contribute the major component. And I'm very, very pleased about that, because I think that it means that it's taking the responsibility and ownership of the regional organisation. But if I don't have the opportunity to talk to you all again, the press, during the leaders' meeting, I know that we always have time, particularly before the leaders' meeting. I hope that you will keep a good eye on the Pacific Island Forum and other organisations. Go back to the work of the Marauta and the review of the Pacific Plan and the framework for Pacific regionalism, which is the basis now for the 2050 strategy. That the politics needs to be back with the leaders, that we deepen regionalism. And how do we do that? We will face challenges, we will face differences, but we find a way forward. And one of the things that we've tried to do that with is to have the narrative of the Blue Pacific, because it's not just words, it's about our identity, who we are as peoples, where we live, where we come from, and our obligations to one another, even through times when we have differences. And the final one that is very dear to my heart is about inclusivity, but including the voice of the people of the Pacific. We are not many people across this vast ocean, no? And the participation of civil society, the participation of private sector, and the leaders of the Pacific have embraced that and have those dialogues at their leaders' meeting. And I think that is what the recommendation of Marauta in his concluding reports, and that's what we've tried to implement here, and we've done it. I think that we have done it. We have done it with great energy and vigor, but I compliment the leaders of the Pacific who've taken that on board and really have embraced it. I wish you all well and in your careers, and you can find me somewhere in Papua New Guinea. God bless you.
Thank you, Tomas. Thank you, Drew. SG Meg Taylor. Many pearls of wisdom and future angles for follow-up by the journalist here. And for sure, we will be organizing, colleagues, some exit sessions and interviews for you. Also, a big whakawhadailasi to our forum chair for taking the time today and sharing with us, and also future interviews to come. Colleagues, that's our press conference for the day. For those of you who have fielded questions that you feel haven't been answered, you can contact us at media@forumsec.org. We will be in touch with the links to an audiovisual file and an audio recording of this session. And we will be uploading our version of this recording in the next 24 hours. So you have 24 hours scoop time to get to it. Thank you, and we'll see you again.